All right, we're going to take a few minutes and look at our practice problems for the second part of the week of April 20th to April 24th. We're talking about estimating the values of irrational numbers this week. So the first question asks us to go to this link and plot the estimated values on the number line. When we pull up that link, it looks like this. And what we're looking for is where these numbers in the boxes belong on the number line. So we need to think about different ways that we could write the values of the numbers on the number line. So if I'm thinking about the value of -5, we'll just work from left to right. I know that -5 times -5 is equal to 25, which means the negative square root of 25 is 5. So I can rewrite this as the negative square root of 25. -4, well, I know that -4 times -4 is equal to 16. So the negative square root of 16 is equal to -4. So right here, the negative square root of 16 is -4. The same is true for -3. That will be the negative square root of 9, because 3 times 3 is 9, and -3 times -3 is +9. -2 is the negative square root of 4, and -1 is the negative square root of 1. So these are our whole numbers represented in radical form. So let's think about where this negative number would go right now. I've got -10. I've got the negative square root of 10. And I know that -2 is the negative square root of 4, and -3 is the negative square root of 10. So I know it's the negative square root of 9. Well, 10 is bigger than 9, so -3 is the negative square root of 9, and -4 is the negative square root of 16. And the negative square root of 10 is between those two numbers. So it's going to go somewhere in between -3 and -4. Let's talk about -3/2. -3/2 is a fraction. It's equal to the decimal -1.5. Well, I know that -1.5 is right in between -1 and -2, so we can drag it to our number line there. Let's talk about some of these bigger numbers. We'll talk about pi over 2. I know that pi is about 3.14. It's actually an irrational number, but we estimate it to be about 3.14, and this is over 2. So 3.14 divided by 2 is 1.57. So pi over 2 is somewhere in between 1 and 2, about halfway. Now let's think about the square root of 20. So what we know is that 4 is the square root of 16, and 5 is the square root of 25. And the square root of 20 is between the numbers 16 and 25. So the square root of 20 is going to be somewhere in between the numbers 4 and 5. Going back to our worksheet, we are thinking about the number, the square root of 2. Well, if I think again about a number line, I know there are a few perfect squares that I know. I know that the square root of 1 is equal to 1. And I know that 2 is equal to the square root of 4. And I know that 3 is equal to the square root of 9. So we'll start there. On my number line, I've got 1, which is represented by the square root of 1. And I've got 2, which is represented by the square root of 4. And I've got 3, which is represented by the square root of 9. Well, the square root of 2 is going to be somewhere in between the square root of 1 and the square root of 4. So it's between the consecutive whole numbers 1 and 2. It falls somewhere there. Now looking at estimating the value of the square root of 3 plus the square root of 3. Again, I know that the square root of 3 is somewhere in between the whole numbers 1 and 2. The square root of 3 is probably, so if we had to guess, we'd have the square root of 2 and the square root of 3, right? So if I could split this up into equal parts, this might be 1.3 and this might be 1.6 because it's split into thirds there. So the square root of 3 plus the square root of 3 is approximately 1.6 plus 1.6, which is equal to 2.12. This is asking you to estimate the value of 2 times the square root of 2. Part 2 is asking us to highlight numbers that lie between 4 and 5. So if we're thinking about our number line, we're thinking about the positive numbers 4 and 5. And 4 is the square root of 16. 5 is the square root of 25. So we want to find numbers that lie in between that. Well, the square root of 2 isn't one of those because it's somewhere way over here. How about 9 halves? Well, this is the same as 9 divided by 2, which is 4.5. Is that in between the numbers 4 and 5? This number is 2 pi, which means 2 times pi, which is approximately 2 times 3.14, which is about 6.28. Is that in between the whole numbers 4 and 5? So that kind of sums up how to work through this worksheet. We're really wanting to visualize the number line and keep in mind these perfect squares that we know. The square root of 1, which is 1, the square root of 4, which is 2, square root of 9, which is 3, square root of 16, which is 4, square root of 25, which is 5, and that's about as far as our numbers we're using today. All right, have a great week.